Welcome back, Better Investors, to the BI Breakdown. And today I have with me Curtis Ray, and I'm super excited to have him here. You guys may know him as the creator of the MPI strategy. That's how I came across him. Curtis, like I said, super excited to have you here. I know you have a lot to give. I have a very young audience on this end of things, and I think what you do is different. It's unique in what it is, and it's similar to what we do, but there is the differences. And so I wanted to get you on today to dive into the nuances and talk a little bit more about the MPI strategy. So without further ado, Curtis Ray, ladies and gentlemen, tell us a little bit more about yourself and your beginnings, how you got started.
Yeah, my name's Curtis Ray. I live in Gilbert, Arizona. I am married with 5 children. So I always have the joke, I'm really good at 2 things in life: making money and making babies. And those babies spend all my money, so I got to keep making money, right?
That makes sense.
I got skills then, but I wrestled at Arizona State University. I'm a collegiate athlete, so I'm all about winning and doing your best and putting in the time, putting in the work, becoming an expert at what you do. And it requires work and discipline and commitment. And unless you're willing to be that committed, you will never be very good at anything in life. And so I was instilled from an early age to go all in on commitment. In 2004, I started my first business in the granite countertop industry. I started, if you've ever been to Home Depot or Lowe's or Floor & Decor, and you see those granite countertops that are pre-cut, that already have the edge on them and all stuff, I actually invented that concept. They're called prefabricated countertops. I brought them in the United States in 2004 with various sizes. We were this amazing remodeling business doing 50, 60 kitchens a week. I was 23 years old making $500,000 a year, $1 million a year. I come from 9 kids, so we were super poor growing up. My dad worked a lot and my mom spent a lot, and life was just life. And so I was 23 years old making more money than anyone I've ever met my whole life. And I didn't know what to do with it. I was lending it out to people. I was doing stupid investments. I was, every entrepreneur in the world makes money, but they lose money very quickly. And in 2012, after 8 amazing years of building this business into a 7, close to 8-figure home remodeling center, I had a really, really bad day. I partnered up with an investor, and the investor said, hey, let's go 50-50. And me not knowing anything about business, I thought 50-50 protected myself. No, that's exactly opposite. 50-50 puts you at liability or at vulnerability if you're not the one who cares about the business. And so this individual only cared about money. 50-50, had access to the bank account. One day in 2014, decided to take all the money out of the bank account and go do his thing. And I was devastated. I had no money. I had no knowledge of anything outside of my exact business that I felt I was an expert in. And on that day, I said, I will never be vulnerable to money again for the rest of my life. I'm going to learn how money works. It's easy to make money. It's so freaking difficult to keep money. And that is where everyone fell. The millionaire doors revolving in and out, make money, lose money, make money, lose money. Every investor in the world goes through it. And on that day, I said, I will never be vulnerable again. I went all in for the next, till today, 9 years later. I am just obsessed with becoming the world's #1 expert on how you make money, how you protect the money, how you compound money, and how you actually achieve financial freedom. Because it's a very strict mathematical equation. It's non-emotional. And if you can follow that equation, you will end up financially free 100% of the time.
Man, it's crazy that your origin story and hearing it, because you read and hear it a lot, especially when it comes to wealthier individuals, is I had to lose it all scenario, right? Or you took a really big setback. And I know even for myself, being in investing, trust me, I've had my fair share. So I'm a day trader and investor by nature before I ever came across the banking bros, and of course introducing other people to infinite banking and the strategy of it. But the background that I come from, if you're not comfortable losing, if you're not okay with failing, you'll never succeed in what it is I do. And so I can definitely reason with you there. And I see the correlation between what you're saying and, like I said, other individuals that are successful and wealthier individuals, is that you have to go through that, that learning process, and that, you get a couple curveballs thrown your way. And so like I said, that's very interesting to see that repeat, no matter who it is, whether whatever book you're reading. Robert Kiyosaki, one of my favorites of all time. He talks about all the different lessons he had to learn and setbacks that he came across, and where he lost millions of dollars. So hearing your story and knowing that you came up and went back down, and then you had to rise again, is kind of that Cinderella story and a phoenix, right? So you're rising out of the ashes and coming back. So that's super amazing. I want to dive straight into it. And get a little bit more into what is MPI and why MPI. So what is the reasoning behind it?
Okay, so I'm going to give you a little history about life insurance. Most people don't know this history of how life insurance came to be. In the early 1940s, whole life insurance became very popular. Why? Because the 1930s was the Great Depression, and everyone lost up to 90% of their wealth in a single decade, just gone and evaporated because of this insanity called no risk, no reward. If anyone ever tries to tell you no risk, no reward, they're lying to you. You do not need risk in your life. You need maximum security and then maximize growth inside of that security. So in 1940s, the whole life contract became very popular. A whole life company could come out and say, hey, we can give you a 6 to 7% guaranteed dividend, and you have no risk to the market, while having life insurance, while having the loan feature, while having XXX, all these really great things. Mm-hmm. Then in 1988, this guy named Nelson Nash came along. Really cool dude, really innovative, really open-minded, and said, whoa, time out. Our whole life contracts in the 1980s are making 12% interest. We can borrow against the policy at 8% interest. This creates this spread called arbitrage, where you can earn more on the money than what it costs you to borrow against. And so this fascinating thing called infinite banking became popular, that you could put a ton of money into whole life, borrow against it, and then produce this extra 3 to 4% interest that was just magic. It's called arbitrage. It's the coolest thing in the whole world. Unfortunately, in the 1990s, whole life lost a little bit of its fizzle. Bonds dropped, treasury bonds dropped, everything dropped, and whole life dividend went from 10 to 8 to 6, and it's somewhere around 6% now. So in 1997, the insurance company came out with a product called Indexed Universal Life. And they said, rather than getting the dividend off of a whole life contract, how about we take that same amount of money, that 4, 5, 6% we're going to get inside of a whole life contract, and we go put it inside of an S&P 500 growth strategy. And let's go grow a little bit more than 4, 5, 6%. Let's grow to 7, 8%. It's a little bit more risky. That's not perfect. It's not guaranteed like whole life, but with a long-term history, it's going to make 6, 7, 8%, a little bit more than whole life. And the loan feature inside of an indexed universal life is only 4%. So now, once again, if you could make 7 on something and it only cost you 4, it created this arbitrage spread that is super cool. The banks decide to get involved and say, hey, we want part of this. We're going to build this strategy called premium finance, where us as a bank is going to lend money to super rich people, and they're going to take that money and invest it into an indexed universal life insurance contract. And they're going to make around 3%. We're going to make around 4%, and life is good. But the problem with that is you have to have $5 million just to qualify for it. So in 2014, I was introduced to a premium finance contract. I was really wealthy at the time. It was right before I lost all my money, right? Mm-hmm. And someone says, you need to get a premium finance contract. And I said, what is it? And they go, you can borrow money at X and go make Y on it and put it inside of a life insurance contract that is secure, it's tax-free, all these amazing things inside of it. And I said, that's really cool. But why doesn't everyone have access to that? It is not cool. That is only specifically delegated for the super rich. My friends, my family, basically every human being I've ever met in my whole life will never have access to premium type strategies. Uh-huh. So what did I do? I built it. I rebuilt it from the ground floor up. How do you take a life insurance contract, remove the bank, remove the underwriting, remove the collateralization, remove all the things that are required for the super rich to get this thing, and teamed up with a multi-billion-dollar A-plus rated life insurance company, and in 2018 got approved to bring to the public. So it's an indexed universal life insurance contract that has an internal infinite banking loan feature. So rather than borrowing money from a contract to go invest in real estate, we borrow money from a contract to put right back in the exact same contract to maintain all the security features, all the tax-free features and the liquidity features of a life insurance contract.
Yeah, so I kind of want to speak to, first and foremost, to kind of lay the grounding on the call is I wanted to bridge the gap between, we're inside the same industry, right? And so I see this a lot, and sometimes it's industry against industry, and then you have people within one industry that's kind of this versus that. And for me, I'm more so, I think, in being inside a fiduciary role that I'm in, I think it's responsible to let people know their options and then let them know what that is and what it looks like. Right. So here's what this is. Here's what this particular product or strategy or concept is. And here's how it works and looks like. And then from there, I'm a strong believer in capitalism and the fact that given equal opportunity, people will make the best decision for themselves, given, like I said, given equal opportunity and resources. So with that being said, is when I look at IULs as a chassis for MPI versus if you're going to say whole life insurance, just to kind of go over some of the differences, for someone at home that doesn't know a lot about insurance and you're watching this, the comparison, so to speak, is I would point out starting with the level premiums versus rising costs over time. That's a big difference between whole life insurance and IUL. Another difference is as well is that the risk that you were speaking about before, the risk in an IUL is not so much of losing the money. It's the risk of it not growing in the event that the market's not going up. So the cash value actually does not build in the event that the market does not rise. Another thing too is on the guaranteed end of that, it has a lower guarantee percentage because you're able to go and chase those higher gains. It has a lower guarantee. Nationally, it's about 2%. Like you said, IULs came out in 1997. I was researching on that as well, of course. And with whole life is something that's been around for about 200 years now. And it has on average about 4% nationally, depending on where you're going. So, looking at that, that's guaranteed though. Of course, the guaranteed numbers that I'm talking about, the 4% versus the 2%. Now, what you can do, I like the wording that you use. You said people took money and invested it into an IUL. So when I think about infinite banking in the strategy with whole life insurance, it's not so much about an investment. It's about a banking concept and a strategy of, okay, if I can use my wealth, put it somewhere where it's going to grow and I can save and spend it at the same time, I can go and make an investment or whatever the case is. So for an example, technically, if I wanted to, I could borrow cash value from my policy and do MPI if I wanted to do that, because we take money, cash value loans against our policy and we go and make investments. So the banking system versus when I look at MPI, to me, it was a better, when I looked at it in comparison to like a 401k, IRA or a Roth account, it's a better way of, like you were saying, retirement. If somebody's looking for a long-term strategy that does have market volatility, it looks to me like it would be a better version of investing. So it's like an indirect way of investing your money in the same way you would if you were to have a 401k, IRA, or a Roth account. So when I was asking why MPI, when I was reading through, one thing I saw was you were saying you're really big on retire with 3 times more than the average person, right? So you really do hone in on that. And to me, I thought that, the purpose of MPI was exactly that, was when you were, creating and coming about that, is that as individuals, it's an alternative to qualified plans. Was that something that you were going for? What is your experience with qualified plans? Did you have one, or, kind of speak to that?
Yeah. So inside of qualified plans, they're not retirement plans. That's the biggest fallacy in all the retirement planners. Financial advisors and CFPs, historically, my opinion, are not very good retirement planners. They are investment planners. They go and invest for you and try to make you the highest rate of return. When you try to convert an investment strategy, index fund, mutual fund, ETF, inside a 401k, IRA, Roth IRA, there's this transition that's called the target date fund theory. That is where you're aggressive in the beginning and then you go conservative at the end.
Yeah.
When that transaction happens, that transition from risky to conservative, it kills your ability to produce retirement income. The average American downsizes their income in retirement by up to 40%. So if you're making $100,000 before retirement, you've got to learn to live off of $60,000. You're making $50,000, you got to learn how to live off $30,000. It's just this devastating anomaly, or this unfortunate situation where 99% of Americans, give or take, downsize their lifestyle in retirement. So I came in saying, how do you increase
I think
4% rule, target date fund theory, all that stuff. So I'm like, hey, there doesn't seem to be anyone in the world that cares about your retirement income. They care about your taxes and your fees and your growth and all stuff. But no one puts focus on retirement income because that is science. That is a mathematical equation. No emotion necessary. You just go do something that makes retirement. So I came in saying, hey, if you use an indexed universal life like this and you leverage it like this, according to the last 26 years of market data, which has had a lot of volatility, .com, 2008, COVID, 2022, we would have outproduced the stock market, including other indexed universal life insurance contracts, whole life insurance contracts, etc., by up to 3 times more distribution. And that's where I focus on, is how do you achieve financial freedom? Spendable income is where we want to go.
Got it. So let's talk timing, right? How long is someone doing MPI? How long? So if I'm someone, let's say, and I'm like, I think I might want to consider MPI. How long am I inside the game before I'm cashing out, so to speak?
Well, just like any life insurance policy, you never cash out. Yeah, your whole life you don't cash out. VOs you don't cash out because you'll lose your tax advantages. We don't want to do that.
Well,
you'll lose your.
I guess. How long before the retirement income that you're talking about, the passive income, is going to start being used and kicking in? How long before that?
Yeah, so my goal is that every one of my clients has 100% of their income the same in retirement as when they're not retired. So if you're making $50,000 a year, how much do you need to save to retire on $50,000 a year? $100,000, $100,000, $200,000, $200,000. That's just a 1-to-1 ratio, so there's no downsizing. In a traditional MPI plan, an MPI strategy, 5%, saving 5% of your income. Let's just say you're making $100,000 a year, saving $5,000 a year. Okay. It will take about 31 years. So 31 years saving 5%, 25 years saving 10%, 20 years saving 15%, 15 years saving 20%. So we have a calculator. We break it all down. The more you save, the faster you achieve your results. Compound interest is the same per dollar. So you save money, it grows. You save double the money, you get double the growth. You save 5 times the money, you get 5 times the growth. So we motivate people to pay themselves first, get money compounding. You make your own goals. You make your own saving limits, and we'll tell you how long it should take in order to achieve the goal you want.
Got it. But it is a long-term saving strategy, correct? If you're using it for retirement, yes, everything's long-term. There's nothing that can be short-term. Gotcha.
If it's a retirement play. If you're using it for infinite banking, then yeah, I mean, we have 60% liquidity up to 60% liquidity in the first year. So there's a lot of liquidity inside of these things when you design them correctly. I'm not a big proponent of infinite banking per se, just because MPI is infinite banking internally. So as you know, I watch you guys' live banking.
I would say it has some banking features. Infinite banking, the concept is exactly that, though. It's a concept, so it has to be structured in the way of the concept. So I wouldn't say that. I would say that it has banking features. Some of the features.
Well, let me explain. Let me explain why I think it's infinite banking 2.0. I believe it is infinite banking. So when you read when you read the book by Nelson Nash, he breaks down that infinite banking is this idea to get your money compounding somewhere, leverage against it at a lower interest rate than what you're making, and then go double it up somewhere, making money. You're being your own bank to go double up, either pay off high interest debt or buy real estate or whatever else. When you do that, there's a flaw to that. When you buy real estate with your whole life contract, right, you now have the risk of the market. You've now brought in volatility into your life that did not exist inside your whole life contract. You now could technically, 2008, could lose that money. You still have to pay it back, et cetera, et cetera. and your gains can become taxable. The two great features of a contract, of a life insurance contract, is it's secure and it's tax-free. And when you infinite bank outside of the policy, nothing is bad because I do it often when I find selective investments and they're really cool, but I know that I've just increased my risk and I've increased my taxable exposure. MPI says, whoa, you don't need outside investments. You don't need them. Because if your policy is making, let's just call it 7% rate of return, and you can borrow against it at 4%, it's still growing at 7%. Now you have money at 4%. Where do you invest it? Do you go invest in real estate? That could be a good option. Do you go pay off credit card debt? That could be a great option because you're saving 20% interest or whatever. Or just go put it back in more life insurance.
Hypothetically speaking, that is, right?
What's that?
So it's when you borrow from your whole life contract, you don't have to pay it back. As a good banker, that might be something that you want to do. And past that is also too, it kind of you take a tax-free loan. So if I were to go make an investment and I need to then pay myself back plus interest, it actually reduces my tax liability on that investment. So if I took a $10,000 loan and I went and made an investment and I made 5% or whatever the case is on that investment, however much interest it is, I then have the liability of paying that loan back plus interest, which then decreases the amount of money that's left over for me to be taxed on. So it does decrease my tax liability and the way that you
use that's a negative. Decreasing your tax liability because of extra expenses is a negative. That's not a positive. That just means you have to pay less because you had more expenses inside of it. But when you put it back inside the same policy,
you keep
this
all
is
the
where
money
MPI is
you
very
pay
unique.
Back.
You don't ever pay it back. You don't need to pay it back. And that's what sets MPI apart from everything. We tell clients do not pay the loan back because it's gaining a 3% average interest spread. If you paid it back, it actually lowers your returns historically. And so you maintain when you infinite bank inside of the same policy, which they did in the 1980s. Nelson Nash talks about it, how, hey, if you can take that money and go buy another whole life policy, now you're making 12% on it and it's only costing you 4%. You're making 4% even on it. But the problem with whole life, the one flaw is the whole life is you can't internally adjust the policy. You can't amend a single policy. You have to buy a second policy or a third policy. Or an indexed universal life insurance contract, you amend the same policy.
Why is it?
You put it.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut
you. Was that?
Go ahead. Finish your thought. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're allowed to amend the same policy, just increasing internally the amount of money you're allowed to put in without mecking it. Whole life, you can't do that. And so it allows it to be much more simple, much more streamlined, easy for the everyday person saving for retirement. And that money that you're going to reinvest for infinite banking, we say, no. Just compound it. Slow and steady wins this race. Maintain security, maintain tax-free, and you don't need to worry about outside investments. Unless something is very selective, very awesome.
Got it. So inside of the book as well, and I'll hold it up for you guys at home. Of course, we're talking about this book here, Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash. This is the 5th edition if you guys want to buy that. So R. Nelson Nash talks about not using IULs or anything else for infinite banking outside of whole life insurance with the mutual company that, of course, it pays dividends. So with that being said, that's why I say infinite banking is it would not align with that. Now, what it could be, you could say it could be used as a privatized bank if that's something that you more so want to say. But infinite banking, the concept, it wouldn't fit the concept because the creator of the concept said not to use IULs. And now with the IULs as well, now that's not me nitpicking at it. It's just, that's just the end of the book.
I know. And Nelson Nash, when he defines the criteria of what an infinite bank should look like, it aligns way more with an IUL than a whole life contract. So I just go off his own words inside that book. And I don't want to argue about this. Just when he says, here's what you need to get an infinite bank, that definition aligns way more with an IUL today than it does with a whole life today. In 1980s, it aligned way more with a whole life because there wasn't an IUL. But in today, when you do the exact definition, the criteria, it aligns much more with an IUL.
Got it. So one thing also too I wanted to speak to, and just so people at home kind of they get the gist of what's going on. Like I said, everybody's not as well versed or in depth Some of the other things I saw and I was looking at as well is most IULs I see are lapsing before the person actually passes away. Is that why you're doing the method of trying to reinvest the money into that so that it continues to go? Break that down a little bit for me, because most IULs, I would go as far as to say over 90% of them are designed to actually lapse. And the cost of insurance actually gets higher as you get older. So if you're talking about retirement, well, if I'm coming to retirement, but my cost of insurance is getting higher, isn't that a law of diminishing returns? As well as too, you got to keep in mind that it rides with the market. So when you're talking about the market, and like I said, I'm a serial investor myself, so I'm definitely not against investing. But I think it's important to keep my banking system separate from my investing, and because saving and investing is two different things. And so when I look at it, the law of diminishing returns tells me that if I'm locking money away for long extended periods of time, that inflation, which is actually higher, is probably double the nominal rate that they actually show you. But inflation drives the price of the things I want and need up. If I'm earning a right along step by step with the price of things, I'm not actually getting wealthier. I'm just able to afford those things later on in life. So I'm not getting wealthier. I'm just affording those things later on in life, right? Like I said, so I had the purchasing power to actually buy those things when they're a higher price. Whereas when I look at my banking system, and like I said, I keep it separate. I think that in my mind, so you get a little bit of how I'm thinking, I see infinite banking as a banking system. I see MPI as an investment strategy. That's in my mind. That's how I kind of view it. Now, with that being said, like I said, I can save and spend. So I can save my money. It's still compounding for the rest of my life. And I'm still also able to spend regularly and repetitively to the point to where I can go and make investments and do different things that will drive my profits and my interest, my return on investment, even higher. So I'm buying those things now where they're at a low price instead of waiting to buy them at a higher price. So I kind of killed two birds with one stone. But what I wanted to, the question here is, what is the mechanism that you're using? And is that the mechanism of reinvesting the money so that it does not lapse and it can continue to go as you get older and kind of help pay for the cost of that rising insurance? Is that the methodology that you have with the strategy? Is that how it works?
Absolutely. But I want to break down a few things. And so I guess the question I have for you, Robert, are you open-minded to learn stuff? Are you a student of the game?
Definitely. Honestly, I think that everything has its place. The thing about it is that if you open up a toolbox, right? And there's multiple tools that could possibly do the same thing. Like if I got a nail, I could use the backside of a screwdriver, right? And hammer that nail in, or I could use a hammer. And so I think that it's important because my next question is actually the cost to get started and stuff like that. So I think it's important for people to understand where they're at financially. I would tell anybody, if you're someone that does not save money, you don't need to be starting with infinite banking. You need to start with like your personal finances and get that on track before you try to go do infinite banking or whatever the case is. So like, I think that everything has its place. It's just understanding what it is, how it works, so that you can make the best decision for yourself. But me personally, that's that. That's
the first thing the first thing I want to educate everyone on, and I know this is going to blow your mind right now because you've heard opposite. Mm-hmm. Whole life insurance and index universal life insurance both increase in cost of insurance as time goes on. They are identical. And I don't know why whole life says that differently. I would like to challenge you to call up your insurance company and say, can you give me a projected cost of insurance for the rest of my life? And you will see it's identical to an IUL, because permanent life insurance has this thing called net at risk. An insurance company is giving you $1 million of permanent life insurance or in a whole life insurance, or giving me $1 million of life insurance in an IUL, cost the insurance company identically. It's the net at risk, how much you have to pay if someone dies. So this idea, whole life doesn't publish their cost of insurance.
Yeah, I was going to say I would have to call and look into that. I've never out of all the illustrations and all the knowledge that I know of, I've never seen that. So I would have to look into it.
Because sure. They don't publish their insurance. So when you say they have a level premium versus cost, no, IULs and whole life are identical. They're identical. So it's kind of, and you can even look at your illustration, look at your rate of return after 20 years and divide it out. And you're going to see it gradually goes down because the cost of insurance is going up. That happens in both IULs and whole life. So that's an interesting thing that I try to teach a lot of whole lifers is we're both in the same industry. I mean, there's insurance companies who provide IULs and whole life, and they both charge identically, whether it's whole life, $1 million of permanent life insurance costs $1 million of cost of life insurance, regardless of whether it's whole life or IUL, because it's the amount of risk a whole life or IUL company has that on their books. But you said something very interesting. Many IULs lapse. That is absolutely true. I am 100% anti-IULs not done correctly. I did an audit of 500 IULs, 500, done by these MLM scam artists out there. You know what I'm talking about?
90 to 95% of them all lapse. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not because the IUL, but because they were designed to maximize commissions instead of maximize growth for the client.
Got it.
9 of the 500 that were designed, 9 of them were designed in benefit of the client. Only 9 of them. 491 of them are on the path to lapse.
So what's the mechanism that you use to like what do you use to like change that, so to speak?
So there's 2 types of designs inside of an IUL. Option A, option B, max funded. So option A is where you buy the most amount of life insurance required, or that you buy the most amount of life insurance at the lowest premium amount. So you go to someone and says, hey, I can get you $1 million life insurance for $500 a month. They're like, oh, that's awesome. A big bang for my, most bang for my buck. That's exactly opposite of what we want to do. Yeah. An option B allows you to save $500 a month and only buy $150,000 of life insurance. So you just cut out 4, 5, 6, 7 times the amount of fees, commissions, and cost of life insurance, saving the exact same amount of money. So when you buy a $500,000 or a $500 a month policy inside of an IUL that is max funded option B, your cost of life insurance is going to be about $8 a month. 492 of that $500 is going to your growth system, your compound system. Only $8 of that is going to your cost of life insurance. But it does increase over time. So let's say you're saving $500 a month inside of MPI. At 20 years later, your cost of insurance is going to be about $25 a month. It went from $8 a month to $25 a month. Is that an increase? Yes, it is. But because it's max funded option B, it's $25 a month. Your compound account is projected to have around $400,000 in at that point in time. So will $300 a year in cost of life insurance eat up $400,000 of growth? Of course not. Then at 65, you're about $100 a month. You're like, whoa, Curtis, it went from $8 a month to $100 a month. It did. But now your compound account is projected to have $2 million of compound interest growth. So when you design it correctly, the absolute lowest amount of life insurance, the lowest fees, lowest commissions, lowest cost of insurance inside of a well-designed IUL, the cost of insurance is a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction that has no bearing on the ability for this thing to lapse. A max-funded contract literally is nearly impossible to lapse. Okay. It would have to be straight zeros for 100 straight years.
Got you. Are you familiar with Chris Kirkpatrick at all, by chance?
Of course I am.
Okay, cool, man. Yeah, great. You guys ever had a conversation at all, or you just saw his stuff?
He does not think very highly of me.
Oh, got you. Okay, cool, man. Yeah.
We don't talk about him.
Oh, okay, cool. No, my bad, man. Yeah, I don't. Me per se, I don't. I'm in finance. That's it. That's what I'm in finance. So I want to get into a little bit of the risk, right? The risk associated. Like I said, there is market volatility that is attached. Now, a regular whole life policy is just guaranteed interest rate. There's an option to add that in there, right? Where you can have the index option with that. Of course, we don't do that. So speak to some of the risk, and also to speak to the startup cost of MPI.
Yeah. So, you mean startup like initial, how much you should save, or what the actual expenses are?
No, not necessarily the expense side of things. Like if let's say just an average, I'm 25 years old, I make $30,000 a year. what's my, how am I looking to get started? And then past that is, what are the risks involved too as well? Because we, you know, throughout our conversation, there's been, we've mentioned multiple different things and factors that play into it that does introduce some risk. So let's talk a little bit about the risk. And then of course to give me an idea of, cause that is my actual age. It's not my income, but that is my age, being 25. Me and an IUL are literally the same age. So 1997, and now like we've witnessed some things, yes, but when I look at the longevity and when we look at the track record of it, I still look at whole life as it survived everything that an IUL has plus more, including World War I, World War II, Great Depression stuff, right? So that's huge. Right now we can project a lot, right? We can do a lot of projections, but we haven't actually gotten to see the performance of an IUL over time. Now, does it do great and well and tremendous? I don't know, right? I can't see the future. I don't have a globe. But what I do want to know is just simply, what are some of the risks? And then if I'm someone that says, hey, I do want to get started with MPI, what does that look like? And how do I come up with my number?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing is, inside of MPI, we only design contracts that are max funded option B, meaning every dollar you put in will be 100% the lowest expenses legally allowable at the maximum compounding rate. That is about 10 times your age. So for someone like you, you would the minimum requirement to maximize is $250 a month. Okay. So $3,000 a year would be the minimum to maximize the benefits. You could go lower than that, but then you're not maximizing your money. And my job is so that you do what's best for your money. 10 times your age or more. I have clients who put in millions of dollars a year. I personally put in $1.5 million per year inside of my MPI policy. Something about risk is interesting. You said we haven't really seen it in various things. Since 1997, it has had more volatility in that 25 years than any previous 25-year segments available, including the Great Depression. When you include .com, 2008, COVID, and 2022, those four big events that have happened, you take that on any other 25-year segment, showing that MPI or an IUL in general can survive and thrive in very, very volatile situations.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it definitely was some turbulent times, but in the last 20, 25 years, and a lot of people too, they got wrecked and hammered in that time as well. How old is MPI, the strategy?
Well, the strategy is in 1997. It's a premium finance type strategy where you leverage money to put into an IUL.
Not IULs, but like you created MPI, right? You're the founder of MPI.
All I did was took premium finance strategy of the bank putting money in an IUL, and I removed the bank making the insurance company's loan feature putting into an IUL. So it's the exact same strategy, just different financiers.
So MPI is how old versus not? So like for an example, the methodology of banking with whole life insurance is super old, but the infinite banking concept in reality is not nearly as old. How old is MPI, the strategy?
Well, infinite banking concept started in the 80s, so it's like 40 years old.
The modernized version of how we know it, right? So MPI is a modernized version of what you were mentioning before. How old is that?
Yeah, I created in 2014.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so so we're about 7 years here.
2001, 2000, 2001, 2002, negative four. And then 16, negative 4. When you add this all up over the last 26 years, MPI would have made around 330% positive interest with 104% deferred interest. So was it perfect? No, because we believe in the S&P 500. I like the S&P 500. Mm-hmm. I just don't like the risk of the S&P 500. So if we can get the growth potential of the S&P 500 while having low interest lines of credit or participating loans, what they cost them, to double up, even triple up the amount of money potential you have, to me, that makes sense when I run it in the mathematicals of what does history look like? Yeah. What is the highest probability of me making the most wealth for myself?
That's why I see it as I see it. This is, to me, an investment, not necessarily per se a banking system. I see the zeros in there as well. So like you have the .com buzz from 2000 to 2002, the 000. And so we have some zeros in there where it's not, because inside of the contract, it only compounds on the guaranteed rate. The growth aspect of that, the potential growth of that, is simply that you can earn money, and then once you earn it, you don't lose the growth after you earn it. But it does not grow in the event that the market goes down. Like I said, I definitely see that one is a banking system. Another one is an investment system whereby it also just so happens to also work as permanent life insurance that can leave your family some generational wealth and protect your economic value past the time you're no longer here. So that's what kind of drew me towards MPI, because you hear it all the time, and the biggest comparisons is whole life IUL, whole life IUL, whole life IUL. But in reality, it's neither one. The reason why it's neither one is because it's more so infinite banking. And if you wanted to say, well, MPI, those are wealth strategies and concepts. They're not a product. Now, is it built on a product? Absolutely. You got to put your peanut butter and jelly on some bread to have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But at the end of the day, is whole life insurance necessarily the infinite banking concept? No. Is an IUL necessarily MPI? Absolutely not. So if somebody's watching this at home and they go call up Nationwide or whoever, right, and get an IUL, it's not going to perform like this, is it? It's not going to do what you're talking about, is it? Because it's not set up like this, right?
It's a strategy.
Yeah, right. It's a strategy. If somebody calls and say, hey, I want to get a whole life policy and I want to be my own banker, it's not going to work the same way the infinite banking concept will work. And so that's what was important to me, is, like I said, I'm big on education. At the end of the day, the market is a free market. That's what capitalism is about. Individuals will choose what they want to choose. But it's important for people to understand what something is, how it works, and what are the risks that's involved.
And that's why I like to show people, like in this scenario, let's go 1997 to 2002 with .com in there, right? Mm-hmm. Would you rather make 16, 16, 16, 0, 0, 0, which is about 48% returns, or go have more security and predictability inside of a whole life that makes 4, 4, 4, 4,
well,
4, 4, 4,
to me,
24%.
I would take the guarantee because I'm a serial investor. And so for me, 16 sounds great, but also I don't know how familiar you are with cryptocurrency, but I do staking and yield farming, so I can get anywhere between 20 to 30 to even 50% depending on what the yields are looking like. So I have various different ways of introducing more risk into my life. I just like to keep my banking system completely separate from my investing system, which leads me to my next question of, is MPI for you, is that your banking system?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So I put in $1.5 million per year inside of my MPI plan, and I use it for everything. I use it to buy my properties. I use it to pay for my house. I use it to expand my business while I keep putting more money into it over and over and over. I've got about $5 million inside my MPI plans right now, and I go in and out, and it's worked out very well for me. In the times I'm not using it for outside investments and other opportunities, I'm making up to 20% rate of return. When I am using it, then it is still inside the system. It diminishes it by 4%, and then I can go do outside investments. And so there's a lot of really cool things inside of MPI. I think the zero is better than the guaranteed dividend when I look at the math. It's not for everyone, because some people want guaranteed returns. I want highest returns with no risk to the market. That's different than guaranteed returns. And so when I look at a 16, 16, 16, and then 3 straight years, I get a 0, 0, 0 with the cost of the participating loan, I'll take that over a 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, because I like making the most amount of money, and it's truly passive. I don't need to go trade cryptocurrency or go do real estate, which I do sometimes. Sometimes there's some really awesome opportunities. And it all remains 100% tax-free. Gotcha. So that's a really cool feature inside of MPI.
Yeah. And this, just for disclosure for the people at home too, I wouldn't say zero risk, because it doesn't matter if it's whole life or if you're talking IULs. There is risk. Anytime you turn over control of your money to someone else, whether it's a insurance company or anybody, right? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. So market volatility is eliminated, but these are based on bonds and so on and so forth. So there is some risk in that. What I wanted to come into now to kind of wrap things up a little bit is, you said at 23 years old, you were making more money than all the people you had met and came across, right? And that's huge. So as a young adult, and coming into your adulthood and really how you want to live your life, planning things, thinking more long term, what are some of the tips and advice that you would give somebody, and like, let's say even your own children as they get older, and I know you said you got a good bit of kids over there, so you'll have to repeat that same process more than one time, but what are some of the tips and things that you're telling them, hey, as they get older, here's what I was doing, here's some things you might want to do, and what would you tell people out there at home?
Yeah, the most important thing about starting a business or finding ways to make lots of money is, first, does the public want it? Does it satisfy or fix a problem people have? You cannot push something that you care about onto people who don't care about it. I was at this home and garden show, and this lady was selling umbrellas in Arizona. No one in Arizona uses an umbrella. Maybe we should. And she had all these statistics of cancer and melanoma and all types of crazy things. And like, we don't care. You can't force your desire on me. So you have to find something, A, the public needs or fixes a problem they have. And two, it's got to be something you love to do so you don't burn out. If you're doing it just for money, you will burn out because money is not sufficiently motivating enough to do something you don't like to do. You'll just burn out over that. So if you find something that brings value to other people and you love doing it, those two things are a combination to make unlimited wealth for the rest of your life.
I like it, man. That's great advice. And I learned so much from our conversation as well. And I'm going to still do more deep diving and more learning on my end of things because, like I said, there's a difference between an IUL and the MPA and the MPI concept or strategy. There's a difference between whole life insurance and the infinite banking concept and strategy. That's why I wanted to get you on. I wanted to talk and have that conversations because I never want to speak from a level of ignorance, and I much rather know something. And even if I disagree with it, I much rather know something and know the truth about it, the facts surrounding it, so that when I speak, I can speak from grounding and I'm not speaking off of hearsay or my personal opinion or bias or whatever the case is. So they're like, so like I just was saying on the live, it was so funny. It was like, Curtis Ray is in here. No, for real, Curtis Ray is in. And then I saw you pop up or whatever the case is. And the first thing I had said, I know you remember me saying, I was like, well, MPI, that's long term. You need to be thinking about retirement. You need to be thinking about long term savings and retirement and so on and so forth. It's the long game. You were like, exactly. It's the long game versus here. We focus more on cash flow. So, and I think that's important, based on what somebody wants, where they're at in their life and so on and so forth. So like I said, I'm a hardcore capitalist, and that means that when the market has options, they can choose. And then from there, they make the best decision based on themselves. Everybody's not going to do the same thing anyways, or else we'll all look the same and be the same. Yep.
But I've got one invitation for you and everyone else, all your people. Yeah. Is cash flow is very important. You cannot survive without cash flow. Take 10% of your cash flow and get into an MPI secure compounding account. Diversify 10% over there, because you will look back in 25 years and say that is the single best financial decision I've ever made in my whole life, is getting a little bit of your cash flow and putting inside of what I call an aggressive secure compounding account. One focus on maximum growth while having some great security. And by just putting away 10% only, you'll look back and that will be your best cash flow option when you're in retirement, in my opinion.
Yeah, man, it's not out of the question. Like I said earlier, is me having a banking policy, I can pull cash value loans. And if I decided to, the same way Nelson's talking about, hey, you can go get another policy. Well, there's really honestly nothing stopping me from taking and potentially doing 10% into MPI or whatever the case is. So like I said, to me, that's why it's important for me to know and understand something for myself personally. And then too, for the viewers and people at home, is that I never want somebody to feel that I think that controlled information is dangerous information. And we saw a lot of that over the coming years up to this point, is that there's only one side of the story being told, especially on the news media and so on and so forth. It's important for both sides to be told and for people to get a well-rounded view of the world and what's out there. Because at the end of the day, I think more people get hurt from not knowing than from knowing. And so that's the biggest thing for me, is that somebody's going to get on the phone. Somebody's going to go try to get an IUL. And 90% of the time, it's going to lapse on them. It's not going to work out. It's not going to be good for them. Somebody's going to try to get on the phone. They're going to try to get a whole life policy for banking. They might not even get it with a mutual company. It's not set up the right way, so on and so forth. So we need to do better as not so much have our quarrels with ourselves, but we need to educate the public. That's our duty. That's our job. That's what we're supposed to be doing. It's educating the public and helping people to understand their options and what it is that they can do. Because at the end of the day, like I said, we are all inside the same industry. So if we chew each other heads
embrace all good.
Exactly. If we chew each other heads off, nobody's going to really win this. That's big for me. And so like I said, man, Curtis, I appreciate it. Make sure you send me over some links. I can put it in the description. And I appreciate you coming onto the show, man. I look forward to, potentially, man, maybe we can network and do some more things together and just really educate people on what insurance has to offer as an industry, because
insurance done correctly is awesome.
Exactly. And so that's my biggest thing, and that's what I want to push for, is helping people, educating people, and most importantly, I learn right along with them. So like I said, I appreciate your time, man. I've actually learned a lot. I hope that you got something from what I was saying as well. And without taking any more of your time, is there anything that you would like to say or finish off with before I let you go?
Just for all your listeners, man, become educated. Nonstop education. Never think you know everything, because there's always a little bit better. Evolution is always happening. Innovation is always happening. And if you want a great, secure place to put money and compound, look to cash value life insurance. There's no better option in the world than cash value life insurance when done correctly by a fiduciary type individual or someone who understands what they're doing.
Exactly. And so thanks for everybody at home and watching till the end. Better investments equals a better future. And we'll see you guys inside the next one.